On episode 252 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Nick Caturano and discuss an app he's developing called the Dine Safe App. You can find the full show notes to this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/252. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Now, today's guest I met on Twitter, and it's kind of interesting because I'm not a big guy on Twitter. I don't spend a lot of time on that. I spend a lot more time on the Facebook group. You can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/group and join the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast group there. And there you're going to see me quite a bit. I do respond to most of the posts. I am engaged pretty much on a daily basis, at least as much as I can be. And there's a lot of great dialogue, a lot of questions, a lot of things going on in there. And I do try to post inspirational things in that there. But I do the same on Twitter. I do post on Twitter, and I do respond to everybody on Twitter. It's just the activity level tends to be a lot lower, so I just don't see the engagement there. But when I got followed by the Dine Safe app, I was like, okay, well, this is kind of interesting. I wonder what this is, because it just sounded interesting. And I started drilling down a little bit, and when I found out what Nick was doing over there with Dine Safe, it's a pretty cool thing. I'm not going to pull it out now and let you know what's going on with it, but if you dine out occasionally and kind of want to know what's in your food and know there's things you want to avoid, this is going to be a really cool app if he can get this whole thing off the ground. So we're going to tell you a little bit about the app during the interview, and we're going to do a big ask for you to try to help support this cause, not fiscally, but with your feet and who you're talking to about it. So with no further ado, here's Nick Caturano. So Nick, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Alan, thanks for having me.
So I guess as kind of a fundamental of introduction, it was funny because I saw where you followed me on Twitter, and I saw the name of the account, and I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. And then I started looking into the app, and I downloaded the app, and I'm like, okay, you're onto something. This is really cool. And if you can get this thing off the ground, this is going to help so many people. And I really do believe it's going to help a lot of restaurants, because once they break that veil of transparency, they're going to find a whole mess of customers that would have otherwise avoided eating out will start coming out because they're offering this type of thing.
Thanks. That's a wonderful explanation and trajectory about what we're doing. And we feel the same way. We feel that there's a lot of people definitely on the sidelines. I know, being in the food industry for a long time myself, working at places like Disney that are trusted for handling food allergies, there are families that travel long distances and say that they're there not just for the entertainment, but just so that they could dine safely as a family. And I ask them what they do on their, when they're back home or wherever they're from. And many times they tell me they don't go out. They get together with other people with similar food needs, and they cook for each other, and they have a little banquet family style gathering. So yeah, there's definitely a big market out there. People just sitting on the sidelines as well, waiting to find resources and locations where they can dine safely.
Now, I think you said one of the reasons you kind of got into this, or at least, kind of one of the drivers as you've gone through this, is you were having some health issues yourself. Do you mind spending a little bit of time talking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing is, I got involved before I got sick, just because I saw, being in the food industry for a long time. And then about 10 years ago, I just started noticing the uptick of food allergies, food intolerances, food needs. I work in the banquets and convention banquets. And it just it was exploding, and I saw everybody in a mad scramble to figure out how they were keeping up with this pace that was going very fast. It wasn't until about a year into the project of the app that I got sick myself and found out that there were so many things that my body wasn't able to handle. So the idea of the app and the app itself became very useful and very real to my situation as well.
So let's take just a minute to kind of talk about what the app is. The name, of course, is Dine Safe App. But do you go ahead and tell us a little bit about this app and what it does for folks?
So being in the restaurants, watching all the trends growing and the needs, and seeing the chefs assisting the guests, I found that they were fumbling around to figure out how to best to address it on a bigger scale. And being at places like Disney and working for Marriott and different big chains, they were doing a great job for the situation at hand. But I just kept thinking there's got to be a more efficient way. I found that even when a chef went to a table and assisted a guest, let's say at a buffet, they would eventually forget what was told them and they would go back up and grab something and another family member would correct them. The chef said not to eat that. So I just thought there was a more efficient, more solid way to have that information so that chefs don't make mistakes. Sometimes there were chefs filling in and they were assisting the guests and they have to go back and check. And it was a lot of time and resources to remember so many food items. I found that suppliers changed what they were using, let's say for a certain sauce. All of a sudden that had changed. So the idea of the app was pretty much born out of food safety and accuracy. And there's a lot of apps out there that are review-based, which I feel are great, but what we wanted to do was be a tool. And the tool for restaurants that they could upload their menu information, their sauces, their dressings, and then they could tag everything that was an allergen or a food concern. If you're vegetarian, if you're vegan, if you're looking out for organic foods, they could just tag that. And then the user could just go in, enter in all their food needs, their allergies, and it was an interactive instant menu. And that way, if somebody, for example, is vegetarian with a peanut allergy, watching their gluten, watching their calories and their sugar intake, they can tag all those things. And instantly, they didn't have to ask so many questions about the foods. They could just see it right on the digital menu, what's safe for them. We're a little bit ahead of our time. It sounds complicated to a lot of restaurants as they approach the app, but it's really a simple process. In talking with you offline, you had mentioned that once they actually do it, it's done and it saves so much time. And that's just the learning curve for restaurants to realize that long term, we're saving them so much time if they invest the 5 or 6 hours it takes to actually create an account, upload their menus, tag it with all their ingredients. They're going to save a lot of time and headache. They're going to be a great resource for their guests. And I think everybody, it's going to be a win-win.
Yeah. And I, having worked in a restaurant business before and as a waiter and working as a manager, and I can just tell you the number of questions that guests will come up with is just astonishing sometimes. And we all early on, a long time ago, it was kind of like, oh, well, that person's just picky was the term that we use. But you've kind of mentioned it here. More and more of these allergies are becoming a reality for folks. More and more people are trying to be healthier. And that might mean going vegetarian. That might mean, like you said, cutting sugar. They may want to eat paleo. They may want to eat organic. And knowing the restaurants that are providing this information for you, you said it early in our conversation before we came on, it's a no-brainer. And I believe that. I mean, I would sit there and I would write it all down so all of my waiters would have it because they're still going to ask. People are still going to ask. But if all the waiters kind of had that basic information available to them in a quick little cheat sheet, and then they use that information to go ahead and key that into your app, I think that transparency is going to bring more people into their restaurant because if I know, okay, my child has a peanut allergy, so I can't go to stores that even have peanuts served anywhere that there's a potential for contamination, and they can report that, then basically I know that's just not a restaurant that I can go to with my child because there's no way they can eat and me know that they're not going to have a reaction. But on the contrary, if there is a restaurant that separates how they prepare the food and they don't let there be cross-contamination, there's just this great opportunity for individuals to know that they can go there and feel more comfortable that they're not putting their child or themselves in harm.
Absolutely. Part of the sign of the times, there's a restaurant in Quebec, I think it's called Free 8. I don't remember the name right offhand, but they are a restaurant that's totally free of the top 8. And they were going to shut down because they had to relocate, but user funding, they just crowdfunded it because people didn't want to see them go out of business, and they raised the money to reopen the restaurant. So there's a need. There's definitely, the indicators are showing that there's a great need for this. And I kind of joke around and say, a lot of these restaurants are going to be like Blockbuster that just didn't look far enough into the future to get ready for the evolving changes that are coming because of the food needs that are growing. And I think there's, I believe in the free market, but there's going to be winners and losers based upon those who get out ahead of these things and those who kind of resist change.
Yeah. And it's funny because I just had my blood test and I'm talking to my doctor about it. And, I'm explaining to him some of my numbers. I'm like, I was on the road for over 3 weeks. And during that period of time, I had to eat in restaurants. I didn't really have an opportunity to cook for myself. And, no, I don't know what they fried my food in. I don't know how they prepared my food. And, I don't want to have to, every time I go into a restaurant, say, do you do this? Do you do that? What about this? What about that? At the end of the day, I want to sit down and eat a nice meal in a restaurant and feel like I'm getting the nourishment that I need. And unfortunately, that's just not there today.
And that's a big part of the idea of our app. As a lot of the people travel, our vision is that before they even go, I know my wife likes to plan ahead, and she'll go on all these websites. If we're traveling to New York for the weekend, or we're going out to California, she likes to literally get online, not only find the restaurant, but go through the menu and already see what choices she's going to want to make. See if she really wants to spend our time and resources to visit that restaurant. So our idea with the app is that guests and users can actually search for restaurants even before they've left their home or before they leave their hotel, and they can make those educated choices. I think that saves a lot of time. So many times I've literally walked into a restaurant, looked at the menu, and realized I'm gambling too much here. We just got to go. And we're wasting everybody's time, not only our time, but we're wasting the restaurant's time, having them seat us, the server coming over, and then us realizing this is not going to be a good choice for us.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is if I go to a grocery store, I literally can look on the back of the box, or I can go online and know, okay, I'm buying a medium apple. What's the nutrition information there? What's the added sugar? What's in this for the most part? And I just can't do that. Now, the cool thing with your app was for one restaurant that you had listed, and I think you've gone through and worked up some of the bigger brands are out there. There's some information, but I was looking through the don't eat list, and what I don't want to have processed soy. I'm okay with fermented soys and things like that, but I really don't want the processed soy. And they had a Caesar salad. And I'm like, why would a Caesar salad have soy in it? I understand gluten because the croutons, but I asked them to remove the croutons. I feel okay about that. But I'm like, I would go in there and order a Caesar salad and not realize that I was getting processed soy.
Right. And I think maybe that's a lot of, we see so many people reacting to so many foods, and they're like, I just had the salad. I don't understand. As transparency is growing, especially in our supermarkets, we're realizing that more and more foods have foods or ingredients in them that we never imagined. And that's part of the modern challenge. And that's something we're hoping to address. What I was also going to just touch on, since you mentioned it, the app was created for restaurants to literally create their own accounts and track their own menus and ingredients. Because a lot of people initially were fairly new, let's say they're downloading the app in the Midwest and they don't see any restaurants in their area on it. They're saying, great idea, but there's nothing for us to use us, and we're short on space on our phone. They're deleting our app. So in an attempt to try to make the app useful to everybody in the United States and in certain parts of Canada, we started uploading restaurant information that's made publicly available. We have a warning on each one that says always alert your server, because we can't keep up with all the changes that they do. But the idea is just to get their public information out there and make the app useful, and to give people a feel for what we're trying to do, so that hopefully restaurants and user base grows, but restaurants feel encouraged to say, hey, I like how this works. We'd like to be a part of this, and we want to create our own account.
Okay. So, one of the things, I've looked at the app, and so I kind of know the answer to this question, but you list several different food allergies in the app that people can kind of go through and, say, okay, yeah, this, that, and then so you build that inventory, and then you kind of go over and you list out some diet choices that, maybe you want to be vegetarian, or, you want to avoid this or do that. Can you kind of talk about some of the allergies that you're tracking with the tool? And what are also some of the food choice diet styles that you have on the app today?
So what originally we started out with, we were thinking of how many allergens should we track? And we thought top 14 or top 8 was definitely essential. We looked towards, we did our research, and we found that Europe, the laws on the books there, which they're already ahead of us, is that you have to disclose the top 14 allergens in your foods for your restaurants and your takeouts. So we thought that was a good place to start. We started with that, and in reaching out to restaurants to join, we found a lot of resistance for even the 14. Some people just wanted to do the top 8 or less. Some people wanted to just pick and choose. So we were forced back to the drawing board to figure out how can we get restaurants to join without surrendering the ability to track more. So we came up with the ability in the back end where restaurants can join the app, only tracking the top 8, because a lot of more responsible restaurants are tracking at least the top 8. And then we're also in keeping with the 14 already laws on the books in Europe. So, but as we were having feedback from people in the food allergy community, we had so many different food needs and people reaching out to us and dealing with chefs and owners that are really interested and food allergy friendly and aware. We have these certain guests that are always here with citrus or some other food allergen. So the list began to expand. We got it up to 33 right now, but we have the ability to go as high as we want. But restaurants don't have to track all of them. So we thought it was a friendly way to introduce the app. And in my mind, I'm imagining a restaurant willing to track the top 8, yet they have somebody coming in with a certain allergy and the week after week, and they mention it to the restaurant. Well, that restaurant might just go in there and tag all the foods for that one. And before they know it, they might be on the 10, 14. Maybe they'll track all 33. So because of the resistance of restaurants they feel overwhelmed when we have so many allergens out there, we're trying to find a way to get them to kind of like baby steps. Track the top 8, but we have the ability. And when some people reach out to us, we're like, we can add 100 allergens, but are you willing? If the restaurants don't track them, they're not going to be useful to anybody. It's just going to be dormant sitting there. So that ability is there. And with the food needs or the dietary preferences, we just went with the top of what we were seeing, what I've been experiencing when I work in the hotels and in restaurants. So that's how that list came up. And yet we could expand. You had mentioned some others that you thought were very important, and we're going to work on putting that in there as well. And then the nutritionals, we have recently added the ability for restaurants to track the nutritional information. And that was based on a convention that I went to last year. And I realized that there was nutritional labeling laws for all restaurant chains of 20 or more. So that's the law going into effect May 5th. So we're already ahead of that, where restaurants now can have all that information available.
So here I am. I want to go out to eat. And there's either a chain or a local restaurant, and I want to go in there to eat. And they're not on your app, okay, yet.
Why? Alan, I don't understand why they're not on the app yet.
I don't either. I think the transparency is going to be a big thing. We're seeing this with other companies. There's actually saw an interview on CNBC this morning of a guy who's started several companies. His first one was Bare Naked. They did some, I think, granola, and he's done a couple of pet foods. He did pet food. He's in a couple of companies. So he's a really young guy, really, really bright. And he was saying, he has to sell on Amazon because Amazon can't be ignored. He says, but he said the bulk of his sales are coming off of his own site. And he said the reason for that is that buyers today want transparency and they crave it. And, you're not going to get that transparency if you're running through Target or Walmart the way that you get it when you have your own website, you're providing valid information and you're responding to them when they're asking you questions. And so providing that transparency is what's made his companies, all of his companies that he has had done this amazing growth and whatnot. He's created that environment. And I find myself more and more buying from those kind of companies that have that same general transparency because they're telling me what's in the food. They're telling me how they treat the food. They're telling me how they treat the farmer. And when you kind of understand the whole chain of this and what now knowing that, this is not child labor in Cambodia that's making this clothing that you're buying, but rather, he's got people with real jobs in, whatever country. And he shows that, they're doing very well. He pays them a very good salary. He makes sure that the cotton farmer gets paid well and gets treated well. He flies out there and you just see that transparency. It's just a huge selling point.
And why not? Why not? Why don't we treat people better? Why is, it drives me crazy to think when's enough? People are making so much money and they're just trying to beat profits constantly and everybody's making so much money. Why not treat people just a little bit better in these countries and these resources? So yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I wish we see more of this, and we're starting to see it. So it's hopeful.
Well, right. Because it's consumer driven in the end, and I would say, yes, working a restaurant, if I had one woman that walked up and told me, okay, I don't like the way you prepared this, or there's something odd and this doesn't taste well. And I'm thinking, well, I've watched 100 other people order that today and no one else had any problem with it. I'll give you your money back and then you can go spend it somewhere else. But that's one customer out of 100. And so I think as more and more people are coming up saying, I want to know if there's soy in my food. I want to know if there's gluten in this. I want to know if this has peanuts in it or has been in contact with any surface that's had peanuts. Being able to have that disclosure, being able to come out and really make people feel comfortable because of the transparency you have over your food preparation and what's in things. And I think the cool thing is I think they might be part remiss because they don't want to give away their recipe. They don't want you to go home and cook it. And then, basically you're not back in there eating. I think that's a fallacy though.
I work at a restaurant in Disney and we give away the recipes for everything that people love. And they still keep coming back. They say, I come back every year just so I could eat this. I think the idea to be able to cook it at home once or twice, but it's not realistic. People want to be able to have that, they enjoy that dining out experience. So giving away a recipe nobody's going to go out and steal your recipe and never come back. That's not been my experience with my boots on the ground.
Yeah. And again, I think more and more people are getting health conscious and wanting to know what's in the food they're eating. It's just kind of a sad state that as a fitness professional, I have to say, if you really, really care, make it yourself, because then you'll know everything that's in it. Don't buy it in a box, buy it in Whole Foods, prepare it all yourself. And that way, what's in it. But with an app like this, it's definitely going to make it a point where the restaurant will. And that's the thing. I was going to give someone a tip on, okay, you're going out to eat. How do you know what's in the food? And it's like, okay, now you just have to be that person and you have to ask the manager or the chef to come out and explain to you everything that's in that food. Say, what are the ingredients? How's it prepared? Does it have this? Does that? Because I'm trying to avoid gluten, trying to avoid soy, trying to avoid sugar. So I do want to know what's in it. And it was funny because every once in a while I like to get a sweet potato. I don't eat a lot of carbs, but I order a sweet potato. And when I get a sweet potato, I like to just put cinnamon. Just straight cinnamon. I say, okay, I'd like some cinnamon, but I only want the cinnamon if it's just cinnamon. So I said, would you go back in the kitchen and ask them if the cinnamon has anything added to the cinnamon?
And I have a picture of the waiter going back, do you believe this guy?
Yeah. And then the guy says, well, yeah, it's mixed with sugar. That's the way we get it. So it's cinnamon and sugar. It's not just cinnamon. So she comes back and says, it's got sugar in it. I'm like, okay, then I don't need it. I'll just eat my potato this way, which is not the tastiest thing to do, but I wanted to have a little bit of carbs at that point. So I ate it. But you have to have that conversation. You have to literally sit down and say, okay, I want to know what's in this. And if there's even a shadow of a doubt when the waiter's trying to tell you, it's like, please go double check. And maybe you exaggerate it a little bit and say, look, I'm hypersensitive to sugar. I don't want to go into a coma right here in your restaurant. So would you please ask the chef if there's any sugar added to this sauce?
And that brings up a point I'd like to touch on. There's a lot of catch-22 right there in defense of your situation where you're trying to express your need to know whether there's sugar there. I find that a lot of people, and I hear this from really great chefs, he says the number one thing, Chef James Slattery from Big Fin Seafood here in Orlando, he's a great chef. He's really passionate about food allergies and food needs. He says his biggest deterrent for the staff to take food allergies and food needs seriously is all the people that fake things. They come in and they might deathly of gluten and all this stuff, and then at the end they order the cake and the waiter warns them there's gluten all over it, and they say, well, they can have a little bit. And he says that hurts the cause in general because we're ready to cater to whatever their needs are. But when they do something like that, the staff gets the feeling that maybe everybody's doing the same thing. So that's one end of the spectrum. But the other side, of course, is, when we're telling people we don't want to have this in our foods, we need honest answers. We shouldn't have to be getting, the little chicken stock in there, they're not going to hurt them. So let's not worry about it.
If you're going to ask the question and they're going to come back and tell you, no, there's no gluten in this. And you say, okay, so you start eating it, stick to your story. If you don't want gluten, you don't want gluten. So, the cake is a no. It's just a no. Maybe your husband or other significant other packs this up and says, oh, well, we'll take the rest of the cake home. And then you have cake at home, and the waiter doesn't know any difference.
And then the way to avoid it all is that if we could just track it on the app and have the accurate information, nobody has to go through that painful process. And I was going to do a fresh plug and all that leading up to what you were talking about, all the statistics and the consumer driven. Our co-founder, David Richard, wrote an article for our magazine about statistics and the millennial needs going digital and wanting to know what's in their food and wanting to know consciously how the market is being driven and if people are being taken care of and stuff like that. So it's definitely, we're headed in the right direction, I feel. It's just going to be how long it takes for that message to go and affect the bottom line for these establishments.
Well, and I think some of them they're seeing it because, I mean, I can go into some restaurants now and they'll have grass-finished meat. So they know that's a thing. Since they know it's a thing that consumers want and are buying, it's on their menu, then people are buying it. That is sort of that kind of transparency. Normally they would just say it's a ribeye or it's a burger. And now they're saying it's a grass-finished burger. Very, very different mindset when they start recognizing it and marketing it that way. Well, now, Nick, do you have any other tips for folks that are looking to dine out on how they can just make sure their food's safe and they're avoiding allergies or getting the types of food that they really want and avoiding the types of food they don't?
There's some really great review apps out there. Find Me Gluten Free, Allergy Eats. They're based on user experience. I think I use one for vegan, vegetarian called the Happy Cow. We just were in Vietnam and Thailand, and I was amazed to see an app like Happy Cow was out there and helped us, since we're vegan, find a lot of these great restaurants, even in LA recently. So there's a lot of the review base where people give their feedback and kind of help share. We've had a good experience. And, when you see the trends and the reviews heavily positive, that helps a lot. So we like those things. Of course, communicating, calling ahead, and just hit the beaten path. I'd like to say use our app, but it's going to take a little bit longer for us to catch on. And we're just hoping for user support. We really need the numbers to grow. We're in a catch-22 where we need the users to encourage the restaurants to join. We need more restaurants to encourage the users to join. And in the meantime, we're just in the middle hoping, come on, guys, we need help. Help us get this off the ground so it can be a great experience for everybody.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm planning on going to this conference. It's about Kido, and they're doing a crowdfunding for it to have this thing. And the guy has negotiated with all of the restaurants, or many of the restaurants in this small in Connecticut, to serve at least one keto dish during that weekend. Because he's like, I'm going to be bringing hundreds of people into the town, tourists that are going to be here wanting keto food. And so if you have something keto on your menu, we'll feature you on the list and what the dish is that you're providing that's keto, and people can select the restaurants that they want to go to that are serving the keto meals.
I was going to say that's something also. I've had restaurants reach out to me and ask me, I'm starting a new restaurant and I want to make meals that are more geared, even though our whole menu is not going to be allergen free, of course. What kind of meals do we make so that we can have that option for people? And I think it's not far-fetched to have a keto dish, a vegan dish, a gluten-free dish that's free from several of the top 8 allergens. I think restaurants do themselves a favor to have something like that ready. Because, what a lot of restaurants sometimes are short-sighted in realizing is that if you have one person that has a food allergy in that group, sometimes I see a 10 top and there's only one person with that food allergy. But that one person, if they can't eat there, like when I go to dine with my family, it's just me and my wife, but we may have 15 people at a gathering. They're worried about where can we go to eat. And once they feel they found a place that we're going to enjoy our meal, that's where we all go. So that you're missing the whole party because you're not focused on having a option for that person with their food needs.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to reiterate here, and I said it in the intro, I don't have a financial interest in this company at all. I just thought what you were doing was really cool. And I saw that, yes, there's a need for users to get engaged here, to talk to the owners of local restaurants, to start getting them on board. Because if you can kind of get some of the restaurants in your location to start going and people start showing up and saying, I'm at your restaurant, or I looked up your restaurant and it's not in this app, and I just wanted to know what was in the food. And they start hearing, these other companies start hearing about your app and how it is driving traffic to restaurants and away from restaurants. I think that will begin to change it because it's consumer driven. So, Nick, if someone wanted to learn more about you or learn more about the app or get the app, where would you like for me to send them?
Okay, we're available in the Apple Store and the Android Store under Dine Safe. There's a Dine Safe in Toronto that deals with food safety. Ours is with a red cross and a green background, so they could find us there to download. You can visit our website to learn a little bit more, or for restaurants to create accounts at www.dinesafeapp.com. And you could reach out to me via email at nick@dinesafeapp.com. We're really accessible. I keep a really busy schedule, but I always make sure I get back to everybody. No question too big or too small. Feedback has helped us really evolve into making this app really a lot better than we imagined. And so we're always open to feedback, open to criticism, open to new ideas. So please communicate with us. Please tell your local favorite restaurants about us. And we hope to see you soon using our app everywhere you are.
All right. So this is going to be episode 252. So you can find all the links to what Nick mentioned there, to include his email, at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/252. So Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show, introducing us to this app. And I have to say to the other folks, really get out and talk to your local restaurants about this service. Transparency is the way of the future. It's just happening, and they can get on the front end of it by working with Nick. But again, thank you so much, Nick, for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Alan, thanks for having us. You're doing great work. I loved everything I saw, and I look forward to hearing all your podcasts. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you'll join me in supporting Nick with the Dine Safe app, talking to your local restaurants, even if they're chains, just letting them know that you're interested in knowing what's in your food. You deserve to know what's in your food. And this is going to save them time and money in the future once transparency kind of really starts taking hold in this industry, which I believe it will if they want to keep their patrons, because more and more we've got these health food style stores, paleo stores, vegetarian stores. More and more of these restaurants are popping up, and for people to know and can trust what's in their food, I think that's going to be a bigger and bigger thing as we move into the next several years. And this app is perfectly positioned to be a part of that. And as I mentioned earlier, I have no financial interest in this at all. Just saw it and thought it was a really cool thing. And it is something that I really want to have so that when I'm out and about and want to stop in at a restaurant, I know what I can order that's going to fit the nutrient levels and what I want in my food. So I do hope you'll help support that. It's a very important cause. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Danielle Capolino and discuss her book, The Microbiome Diet Plan. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.